If your joints ache more than they did 5 years ago, the food you think is healthy might be the reason. Research shows approximately 35% of U.S. adults have systemic inflammation, the kind you can't see or feel at first. It quietly drives everything from joint pain to brain fog. And here's what caught me off guard when I looked at the research. Some of the foods marketed as heart healthy or whole grain goodness are actually making it worse. Before we get into what to eat, and I've got specific foods that can reduce inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein by measurable amounts, there's something about the order you eat them that almost nobody talks about. Researchers found that eating the exact same meal in a different sequence changed inflammatory markers in adults over 60. We'll come back to that. But first, you need to understand why inflammation after 60 is completely different from what you experienced at 40. When you're young, inflammation is like a fire alarm. Cut your finger? Inflammation rushes in, does its job, then leaves. Clean and simple. After 60, that alarm gets stuck on. Scientists call it Inflammaging, chronic low-grade inflammation that just stays. Your body produces inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. We call them IL-6 and TNF-alpha for short, even when there's no injury to heal. Think of it like having your immune system's engine idling too high all day long. Plus, oxidative stress from years of cellular damage keeps triggering more cytokine production. According to research published in Immunity and Aging, this persistent inflammation at least partially drives atherosclerosis, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, osteoporosis, basically the whole list of conditions we blame on just getting older. Normal C-reactive protein levels, that's CRP, the main marker doctors use to measure inflammation, should be under 1 milligram per liter for low risk, according to standard medical guidelines. Between 1 and 3 is moderate risk. Above 3, that's high. In studies tracking older adults over time, those with elevated CRP and IL-6 had increased risk of everything from arthritis to depression to difficulty with daily activities. Now here's where your gut comes in. You know how everyone's talking about gut health these days? Well, people who live past 100 have something fascinating happening in their digestive system. Research has found their gut bacteria looked more like a young person's, more diverse, with beneficial species that actively fight inflammation by reducing TNF-alpha production. Your diet directly shapes this microbiome, which brings us to the foods that are secretly stoking the fire. Okay, here's the first one. And honestly, this one bothered me because I ate it for years thinking I was being healthy. Whole wheat bread. Yes, even the expensive sprouted kind. Look, whole grains can be anti-inflammatory when they're actually whole. Steel-cut oats, quinoa, brown rice in its real form. But most commercial whole wheat bread, it's ultra-processed. The grain is pulverized into flour, mixed with preservatives, and even if it says 100% whole wheat, it spikes your blood sugar almost as fast as white bread. That blood sugar spike triggers oxidative stress and an inflammatory response. Every single time. The second one, low-fat yogurt. When they remove the fat, they often add sugar or artificial sweeteners to make it palatable. Plus, the fat in full-fat yogurt actually helps your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins and provides satiety. Studies consistently show that full-fat dairy is associated with lower inflammation markers than low-fat versions. And the third, this is the big one. Vegetable oils like corn oil, soybean oil, and vegetable oil blends. They're loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. Now, you need some omega-6, but the typical Western diet has about 20 times more omega-6 than omega-3 fatty acids. That imbalance drives up cytokine production, inflammatory rocket fuel. So what do you eat instead? Let me tell you what the research actually supports. Remember I mentioned meal timing? Here's what most videos won't tell you. Eating fiber-rich vegetables first, before your protein and carbs, can blunt the inflammatory response to the entire meal. Start with a salad dressed with olive oil and vinegar. The acetic acid in vinegar and the polyphenols in olive oil create a 1-2 punch against post-meal inflammation. Now, for specific foods. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been shown in studies to reduce CRP and IL-6 levels. You need it with black pepper and fat for absorption. Try golden milk with full-fat coconut milk. Studies have shown that adults who consumed anthocyanins daily, that's the compound that makes berries blue and purple, experienced similar CRP reductions. You get therapeutic amounts from about a cup of mixed berries. Here's another powerful one, quercetin. It's in onions, apples, and green tea. Research suggests quercetin can help regulate TNF-alpha production. And resveratrol, yes, the compound in red grapes and wine, has shown promise for reducing multiple inflammatory markers. Though you'd need to drink way too much wine to get therapeutic doses. Stick to red grapes or peanuts with the skin on. Fatty fish. Research has found that omega-3 supplementation decreased inflammatory cytokines, while control groups saw increases. You don't need supplements though. 2 servings of salmon, sardines, or mackerel per week, as recommended by the American Heart Association, provides beneficial levels. Wild caught when possible, but farmed salmon still beats no salmon. If you don't eat fish or want extra support, a quality omega-3 supplement can help. I've put links to a few evidence-based options in the description that have the right EPA to DHA ratio. Multiple studies of the Mediterranean diet have found improvements in inflammatory biomarkers, particularly CRP, IL-6, and IL-17. But here's what they don't emphasize enough. It's not just about adding olive oil and calling it Mediterranean. The pattern matters. Colorful vegetables at every meal. They're loaded with compounds like quercetin and other polyphenols. A handful of nuts daily. Walnuts are particularly anti-inflammatory. Legumes several times a week. Whole grains in their actual whole form, not processed into flour. Herbs and spices instead of salt. Many contain natural anti-inflammatory compounds similar to curcumin. And here's something that's really encouraging. Studies suggest anti-inflammatory dietary changes can lead to improvements, though the timeline varies by individual. Some research shows measurable changes in inflammatory markers within several weeks of consistent dietary changes. Adults 60 and older consumed about 52% of calories from ultra-processed foods, according to recent CDC data. Research has found that high ultra-processed food intake was associated with cognitive decline, and when researchers adjusted for inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha and oxidative stress, the association weakened, suggesting inflammation is the mechanism. Which brings us back to those centenarians. Remember I said eating foods in a different order changes your inflammatory response? Here's what researchers found. When you eat vegetables first, then protein, then carbohydrates last, you can reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes, with studies showing reductions ranging from approximately 29 to 37% at 30 to 60 minutes to up to 70 to 75% in some trials, compared to eating carbs first. Less blood sugar spike means less oxidative stress and inflammation. Vegetables are rich in fiber and water, which fill the stomach, slow down gastric emptying, and reduce how fast sugar enters the bloodstream. So that Mediterranean meal? Start with the salad, then the fish, then the whole grain or potato. Same foods, different inflammatory impact. But here's the real payoff from that Centenarian research. Their unique gut microbiome didn't just happen by luck. It was shaped by decades of eating patterns that fed beneficial bacteria while starving the inflammatory ones. Every meal is either feeding inflammation or fighting it. After 60, there's no neutral ground. One more thing that surprised me. Research on individual anti-inflammatory compounds like omega-3s, curcumin, and resveratrol shows they can reduce inflammatory markers over time. While specific combination studies are limited, evidence suggests these compounds work through complementary pathways, and their anti-inflammatory effects may build with consistent use. Before we finish, everything here is for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice, and it's not a substitute for talking to your own doctor. Your situation is unique. Your doctor knows your full health picture, your medications, your history. Use this as a starting point for that conversation, not a replacement for it. What's one food you're willing to swap this week? Let me know in the comments. I actually read them, and your experiences help other viewers figure out what might work for them.